Vice President Harris, since you took office, 400,000 more Americans have died from COVID. The infection rate is higher than it was a year ago. People have to wait days to get a test. What do you say to Americans who are counting on you to end this pandemic?
Well, first of all, let me start with saying we are all 2 years into this frustrated. Now, none of us want to wear masks, but I think it's important to also recognize where we have together made progress. If you think about it, just a year ago, very few people had been vaccinated. Now, over 210 million Americans have been vaccinated. And why? Because the American people took it in their hands to take the power to do what was necessary to save their lives. Tens of millions of people have been boosted. We now have treatments, therapeutics like the Pfizer pill that we did not have a year ago. We now know that the tools that we have available to us, such as wearing masks, make a difference and can help us avoid the coronavirus and certainly avoid what can be the most tragic outcomes when we're vaccinated and have been boosted. So there has been great progress. Think about it in terms of all of the parents who, for at least a full year during the first year of COVID, had so many challenges in terms of educating their children. Now over 95% of our schools are back to full-time in-person learning. Businesses are opening back up, small businesses are opening back up. So what we're seeing is great progress. There's more work to be done. There's no doubt about that, and that's going to require all of us. And I'm very proud of the fact that the American people have taken on the power that they have, in addition to the work we must do as an administration to get in front of this virus.
The Supreme Court dealt the administration a blow last week when it ruled against a vaccine mandate for businesses with 100 people or more. How do you plan to get people vaccinated now?
Well, again, I think that we cannot underestimate the power of the personal responsibility the American people have taken on. I mean, it makes me very proud. You know, I travel around the country. Americans are serious about saying we're not going to let anything get the best of us. And so that's why over 210 million people have been vaccinated. When we look at the issue in terms of what employers want to do, there are employers who don't need to be told what to do. They're taking it in their hands to say what's in the best interest of the safety of the people who work in their workplaces. And again, I applaud the American leadership at every level, be it a student or somebody who's running a corporation, to step up and take some charge around what we know are the best practices to keep safe. But I'll also say that one of the greatest challenges, frankly, that we have collectively faced in the midst of this pandemic of COVID-19 is the misinformation. That has probably been one of the greatest challenges we face. It's the amount of misinformation out there that then is allowed to gain air and to get traction through platforms. And I think we all also have to speak out and say, let's make sure that we're speaking the truth about the nature of this virus and reject misinformation.
Madam Vice President, inflation, labor shortages, transportation issues, these are just some of the factors leading to empty grocery store shelves and higher prices when people are going to fill up the gas tank. What tools does the Biden administration have to address these pocketbook issues?
Well, pocketbook, as I like to call it, kitchen table issues are some of our highest priorities. And the reason I talk about it is because, you know, I grew up with a mom who raised her two daughters and would sit at that kitchen table after she put us to bed, thinking about how she was going to make everything work, right? And so those are some of our highest priorities for both the president and me. We talk about it all the time. Part of the issue there is how do we bring down the cost of living? Because for too many Americans, it is one of the biggest challenges they face in terms of their family. And so, one, let's recognize part of the challenge is that through the pandemic, we had a situation where supply started to be greatly reduced because things slowed down in terms of production, in terms of manufacturing and distribution. So now we're facing a situation where we had limited supply and a greater demand. Prices started going up. Let's deal with the short-term issue. We got to deal with the supply chain in terms of opening up our ports. What the president and I realized is that our major ports were days a week, 8 hours a day. So we said, nope, got to work them 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And that has opened up that bottleneck around getting more supply to the American people. What else do we need to do? Bring down the cost of living. That's why our policy with Build Back Better is let's bring down the cost of childcare. So no family should pay more than 7% of their income in childcare. Let's bring down the cost of prescription drugs. Take, for example, diabetes. I have members of my family have diabetes. Insulin is one of the only ways to save their life, and it is so expensive. So we're saying insulin should cost no more than $35 a month because it is a life-saving measure, and people shouldn't go broke trying to stay alive. So these are some of the things that we are doing. There's no question that these are issues that we must confront and we must deal with, both in terms of short-term fixes and what we need to do over a period of time.
You mentioned Build Back Better, and as we know, Senator Joe Manchin is a no on that human infrastructure bill, as you're calling it. What do you do next?
Well, listen, I believe that when it comes to some of the basic needs that the American people have, they have a right to expect that we're going to meet those needs. Childcare. It shouldn't be that a family goes broke trying to take care of their children. It shouldn't be that people have to leave the workforce for a job they care about or a job that allows them to pay rent because childcare is more expensive than their monthly check. And so part of what we are committed to doing is saying, let's bring down the cost of childcare. This is not a political issue. Anybody who has children, certainly any working family, knows that in some places, childcare is more expensive than college tuition. We're not going to give up on that. Elder care. How many families in our country have young children and they're taking care of their elderly parents? We call it the sandwich generation. Well, let's bring down the cost of elder care. That's part of our proposal. Because again, we want to reward individuals who say that I want to take care of my parents. I want to take care of them, and it shouldn't mean that I can't work anymore or take care of all my responsibilities. We're not going to give up on that. We're not going to give up on bringing down the cost of prescription drugs. So, this is, and it's not a political issue. It's really about everyday working folks who deserve to be able to afford to live and take care of their families.
Vice President Harris, I want to ask you one more question of importance to our communities, especially those around the border. You were tapped by President Biden to oversee the root causes of the migration issue at the southern border. Our colleagues in Laredo are telling us that nonprofits there are just overwhelmed and they want federal help. What plans are there to send more federal aid to these communities along the border?
Well, here's the way I see it. We've got to deal with the root causes in addition to what are the effects, right? Now, my focus has been on the root causes, and here's where I come from. I come from a position and belief that most people don't want to leave home. And when they do, it's for one of two reasons, right? They don't want to leave home, the place where they grew up, the place where they worship. They don't want to leave their grandmother. And when they do, it's for one of two reasons. One, either because they're fleeing some harm, or two, because they simply cannot take care of their basic needs or the needs of their family if they stay. So the focus that I have placed on this is to deal with how can we contribute to letting people stay in their home country. And that means doing work like we've done to bring together American CEOs and corporations, to have the private sector help invest in this. When I started this out, we had about 12 CEOs. We now have 77. When I started out, we had a couple $100,000. Now we have a $1.2 billion investment in those countries like Guatemala and Honduras, and where we know that when we, as Americans, as part of the Western Hemisphere, help those countries invest in their people, they're less likely to flee and then become a concern for us on our border.
Vice President Harris, thank you for your time today.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.